What about the Epstein stuff? Do you care about that?
Oh, I think that's frivolous, honestly. Frankly, I mean, this has been litigated by some of the biggest law firms in the world. David Boies, Schiller Flexner, was representing Epstein clients. You think they had some of the most competent lawyers in the world doing discovery? Nothing came out of it. I mean, I remember when you had the spectacle of all these women who were saying, we're going to release our own Epstein files, as though it's like this big dramatic thing. It's like, are you the people, you know, why hasn't it been released? It's been a decade. Where's you make the accusation? You can, nothing is stopping you. You're the people who are nominally supposed to be the victims. So I think over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, I think, you know, what's come out with DOJ and people like Cash and Dan, who came into office thinking, we're totally going to find out what happened with the Epstein stuff. Once we get in there's going to be a secret trove of evidence, and they have to come out and eat crow and be like, it's not there. I think that's really embarrassing for them. I don't think they do that unless they're just telling the truth. Like, that it's a lot easy when you're on a podcast. It's pretty easy to talk whatever, you know, say whatever you want, talk about all the big dramatic reveals you're going to have. But if you're actually sitting in the chair, you can't do that. So I look at the Epstein stuff as just like, kind of at this point, kind of frivolous. And you know, I mean, I think Bondi actually had one of her better rejoinders when people were asking her this stuff. It's like, did you ever ask Merrick Garland about this? Did you ever ask Alex Costa about this? No, you like completely were silent about it for 4 years, and all of a sudden you're really interested in these files, which don't apparently. I just like don't think that what people say even exists. I think I take Cash and Dan at their word.
So you don't think Donald Trump is in the Epstein files?
I think his name appears, right? Obviously, because like he and Jeffrey Epstein knew each other. Mm-hmm. So, but that doesn't mean like that's been news. That's been known for decades. Like there's the famous picture of the two of them at Mar-a-Lago. But do I think he did anything wrong? No.
Then why won't Kash Patel answer the question under oath? Did you tell Pam Bondi that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Why won't he answer a very basic question like that? That's the part that I don't.
Because that's internal Department of Justice communication that he should never answer for privilege reasons.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I thought he was allowed to answer that question. And I guess my thing is, if the answer is no, why not just answer it? My understanding is he's allowed to anser that. I just thought so.
No, I don't think they don't discuss their internal communications. Like what did I tell Pam Bondi? They don't talk about, I mean, and you can go back administrations. Nobody talks about that sort of thing.
Do you think inevitably though, that's why Donald Trump is calling some of his supporters stupid for even bringing up the Epstein files now? I mean, we've been hearing about it for years, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think that I think from Trump's perspective, he's like doing all of these things in the world that are improving things dramatically, signing peace deals, you name it, from his perspective. And then some of his supporters are like fighting over a guy who died 6 or 7 years ago. And to the extent that, I mean, there's been so much actual investigation of this, right? Not just in terms of the criminal investigations of Ghislaine Maxwell, but also the civil investigations in terms of the litigation that happened. And nothing, right? Like, do you think David Boies, who had the potential to get millions and extract millions and millions of dollars in settlements from people if you were able to uncover evidence and discovery of wrongdoing, would not do that? I mean, they had the legal help they needed. This wasn't a situation where they didn't have really qualified legal help. They had the best lawyers in the country, the best plaintiffs lawyers in the country, and couldn't find anything.
So if Trump didn't have, I'm not necessarily saying that you're saying this, but if Trump didn't have anything to hide, why would he send his former personal attorney to interview Maxwell and then send her to this facility, which is a very low minimum security prison, and not even answer the question yesterday? Are you thinking about giving her a pardon? Well, maybe not. If he had nothing to hide, why wouldn't he just say no, Will? This is one of the biggest sex traffickers in the history of this country and the world. Why is the Trump administration coddling her? Why would they be treating her this way? Why would they send her to this kind of facility for this serious of crimes that she was found guilty of?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. Well, I don't know what the decision is with regard. I don't know.
Educated guess, Will.
You're right. Educated guess. I mean, they're like. They wanted her. They wanted her testimony. They wanted her on the record. I don't think apparently nobody had ever bothered to get that at DOJ before. So DOJ put her on the record. You actually read her testimony. I mean, there's points where you have. I mean, she's very nice to Trump, so maybe she's trying to curry favor for a pardon. I don't know. But on the other hand, she's kind of poo-pooing a lot of the big weird Jewish conspiracy theories. You know, for example, there was this conspiracy theory that Epstein was Mossad because Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was also Mossad, and so that's the Mossad connection. And she's like, not only did she say there was no such like meeting or that Epstein wasn't Mossad, she said they literally never knew each other. They never met. They had no interaction, which is a remarkable thing to say because she's saying that under oath, and it's actually one instance of them even being in the same room together would be sufficient to disprove that and tack on a 5-year perjury count on addition to the end of her sentence, which will end. It's not it's not a life sentence or anything.
Call me crazy. Call me crazy, Will, but I just think the reason why Donald Trump's former personal attorney interviewed her and the reason why they sent her to this facility is to protect Donald Trump. I think it's very.
Well, then why would they release the document? They put the transcript of the interview out in public.
Oh, of course they did. Of course they did, because they know, and she knows. She might not be a stupid woman. She knows that if she.
Well, then, whoa. Okay, you're saying that you think that he's trying to hide something. Then he wouldn't have sent his DOJ to interview her at all. He would have just not had an interview. Why would you even Why would you interview someone and then put it in public if you're trying to hide something?
I think there's one reason, because they wanted to make sure that she cleared Donald Trump and sent her to this facility, and they've had conversations about it, and she knows exactly what's going on here.
Okay.
And it's pretty to me.
I don't think they would in the abstract think that her saying nice things about Donald Trump would clear him in the court of public opinion. She's a convicted felon.
Then I would ask this question. I already asked it to you, but I asked this to anybody. Why would they send her to this low minimum security prison and treat her like she's not a serious criminal? Everybody in this industry pretty much says this is unprecedented with what this woman was convicted of. Why would Donald Trump and his administration help facilitate sending one of the biggest sex traffickers in the world to a Club Med facility, basically? And to me, there's only one reasonable conclusion, not because they were being nice, because they're hiding something. Why else? Give me another logical reason why.
I think maybe you're trying to negotiate a deal. Maybe there's something you're trying to. Maybe you're trying to negotiate some testimony from her. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe you're trying to negotiate some information out of her that might not be useful for testimony, but might be useful for some other reason. I don't know.
Or maybe you're trying to protect the president of the United States.
Well, but then you wouldn't even bother doing the interview in the first place. Right. That's the thing. I don't think your theory makes much sense. I think that if you actually were trying to accomplish that end, there's a lot easier things to do.
The timing of it is very interesting. Why would they do it now? I think because the Epstein stuff is all getting out there in public. Donald Trump was on the Epstein flight log at least 7 times. Jeffrey Epstein is on tape saying that Donald Trump at one point was his best friend.
So was a whole bunch of people. And it's moreover, there's literally no actual evidence of him engaging in any foul play in this regard. None.
Well, then
all the evidence points the other direction entirely. Moreover, as I described, this is another circumstance where you go back to the fact that there's been this enormous amount of civil litigation being done with extensive discovery and nothing comes out of it. Both Cash and Dan had to come out and publicly say the list doesn't exist. I know we said it existed. It doesn't exist. Yeah. I think this is preposterous. I think this is QAnon tier garbage.
You think the Epstein files are QAnon?
I think the theory that Donald Trump engaged in any malfeasance is QAnon tier garbage.
Based on what? Why would you see?
Based on the complete lack of evidence of that, despite there being extraordinary extensive investigations of this by both private and public actors. QAnon tier garbage.
Why won't they release the files?
Trust the plan, bro. QAnon tier garbage.
Okay, well, I disagree with you. There's a lot of real victims out there, and I do believe Donald Trump.
Yeah, and despite somehow they haven't managed to say anything about anybody. The only person who did try and accuse somebody got sued for defamation and had to retract it.
Why not release the files?
What? Why not release the files? Because apparently, I don't know what files. It's not clear that there are files that can be released that are even remotely relevant here, other than because most of the things that are in the Epstein files apparently are young children. Literally the sex abuse videos of Jeffrey Epstein having sex with young women.
Yeah, they don't have to release those videos, and they don't have to put out the names of any victims. In fact, they can redact those names. I'm just saying, why not release all the files with all these? If indeed,
also because it's grand jury testimony, they can't release grand jury testimony because that's confidential as required by law.
Yeah, Donald Trump has the legal authority if he wanted to release the files.
No, he doesn't have the legal authority to release grand jury testimony. That's on the judge.
Okay,
the judge has to sign off on that. Bondi tried to get the grand jury testimony released.
Right,
the judge refused the motion.
Correct. With the less than 3% of the files that were not released, you are correct on that. But about 97% of the files could be released without any grand jury testimony that they could release tomorrow, tomorrow, without any judge having to sign off on it. Donald Trump will not do that. I respectfully disagree with you. I don't think this is QAnon stuff. I think QAnon stuff is saying that Trump won the 2020 election. I think it's QAnon stuff saying that, this is...
He has a much better claim. There's much more evidence that he might well have prevailed in the 2020 election than there is that he engaged in a malfeasance with Epstein.
Why do you care about race so much?
Why do I care about race so much? Well, I care about people that are discriminated against, whether they be black people or transgender people or gay people. I feel like there's a lot of people in this country that are judged based on race, skin color.
Aren't you judging them by their skin color when you say, I'll choose you because of your skin color?
I want people to be treated as equals, no doubt. But you would agree with me that there is.
You just said you would choose the person because of their skin color. That's not treating them as equals.
Here's why. Would you agree that there's systemic racism in this country?
No.
You don't.
Can you provide evidence of systemic racism?
Sure. So Ahmaud Arbery
was an equity. Equity would be a systemic racism.
So Ahmaud Arbery was lynched by 3 white men. For months, there was not even arrest that was made. The mother was lied to by law enforcement and local politicians in that city. My question to you, if Ahmaud Arbery was white and 3 black men did the exact same thing, do you think there would have been arrests that day, or you think they would have handled it the exact same way?
There's no way for me to be able to answer that question. You could have a corrupt police department in a town,
not
with a
racist,
community that is corrupt.
Nothing to do with
racism. Will always exist at the individual level. When you're talking about systemic, you're talking about laws. Can you point to a single racist law?
I'm giving you
an anecdote. You're giving me an anecdote of insane people.
If George Floyd was white, would the same thing have happened to him?
No way for us to be able to know that.
No way for you to know. Even though the officer was a proven racist who had used the N-word in Derek Chauvin in the past, you think the exact same thing would have happened if they weren't recording? If they weren't recording that, it would have been a police report that said George Floyd was the aggressor, and you don't think it had anything to do with race?
How do you know that? How can you cannot logically know that?
Here's how I know that, because Derek Chauvin and those police officers filed a fake police report. And the only reason why Derek Chauvin is in jail right now is because there were good Samaritans that recorded it. That's why we know that.
How do you know that that couldn't have happened if his skin color was different?
I'm asking you the question. You're making the case that if George Floyd was white, you believe the same thing.
I'm not making that case. I'm making the case that you're making a claim that is not logically provable.
It's not logically.
You said if his skin color was different, a series of actions, the following actions would have been completely different. There's no way to logically know that.
Well, logically, let me go back to Ahmaud Arbery real quickly, because I think you're a smart guy. And in my personal opinion, with respect, I think you're being disingenuous in this argument. You're telling me that I'm going to explain. Ahmaud Arbery, an innocent black man jogging down the street, 3 white people literally lynch him. Law enforcement had the video. They saw the video because, as you know, one of those white men recorded it. All of law enforcement there were like 20 or 30 cops on the scene. They all saw the video. Not one arrest was made. They lied to Ahmaud Arbery's mother. And you, hold on, here's the question. And you mean to tell me that if Ahmaud Arbery was an innocent white man in that city, jogging down the street, and 3 black men murdered him, not one arrest would have been made that day? Give me a break.
Logically, there's no way to. I get your point, though. Look, I'm not familiar with that example. It sounds to me like you had racist individuals doing something abhorrent, and that would have to be a deeply corrupt department. You're in the same way you're going to have corrupt individual police or pockets of police. That does not equate a systemic level of corruption.
Let me ask you another question then, because I guess.
But how am I being disingenuous in this analysis?
Because I think anybody that, in this instance, maybe that is logical, would tell you that if Ahmaud Arbery was white and 3 black men did that to him, that it would have gone down a very different way.
That's not logic. That's thinking in generalities, though.
No,
I think opposite of logic.
I think it's understanding logically that there was racism in that system, in that police department, with the police officers and politicians, and they all lied. And I believe Ahmaud Arbery's skin color was a main factor.
It could have been a big factor, but people also, when they do something atrocious, they want to cover it up. They could have done something too atrocious to someone who was white and covered it up in the exact same way.
If you could give me an example of a white person that was killed by 3 black people and they covered it up.
There are many. I can't give you a one-to-one example of that scenario, but there are many white people who are killed at the hands of police every year. What would that be evidence of? I'm not making a claim that it's evidence of anything larger.
Okay, well, can you give me an example of a time where you were pulled over by police officers because of the color of your skin?
Well, no, I cannot. Now, what would that be evidence
Well,
of?
I don't think this is funny actually, because I've actually driven with people who happen to be black that were pulled over for no reason at all, and it's pretty obvious to me. And even Tim Scott and others that are actually serve in D.C. Have told me, and many others, that they were pulled over. They're pulled over 8 to 10 times a year. They believe because of the color of their skin. I absolutely believe. Listen, I'm pro law enforcement.
Good example. Can we talk about this? Because
Yeah,
maybe they drive differently than I do. I have been pulled over one time my life.
that's my point.
But
That's my point. You're making my point.
Evidence.
So you think black
You
people as a
claim
whole
that
drive
an
different?
absence of evidence is evidence of something larger.
You think as a whole black people drive differently than white people?
You can't say, Warren, you've never been pulled over before. Therefore, that's evidence that you haven't been pulled over because you're white.
Warren, I've never been followed in an electronics store because of the color of my skin, because they think I'm going to steal either. Do you understand the larger point that I'm trying to make here? Sometimes black people
If you dress different, if you dressed with your in a stereotypical way, a white person could dress in a way that would set that store owner off in alarm and be like, I gotta follow this guy. He could be a security risk.
So you think people are following people for? You think people are following other people?
I think a black man who is a well-dressed black man, likely in most environments, is not going to be followed around. Again, there will always be individual racism, though. There are racist individuals.
So you think the major factor of why black people are followed in stores because in fear of they might steal stuff is not their skin color, but because they might be wearing baggy pants?
There's no way for me to know that. That happens at the individual level. Every store owner has a different reason. They're in a different environment. Different factors are contributing to that decision that they're making.
So is Tim Scott lying when he says that he was pulled over 10 times last year because of the color of his skin?
I don't know who Tim Scott is.
Okay, well, he's a representative in Washington, D.C., okay, and he ran for president. I'm just saying, I don't know what it's like to be black. Obviously, you don't know what it's like to be black in this country either. But I think, in my opinion, I guess this is where we disagree, Warren. Yes, I do think systemic racism exists. I do think that
evidence. Can you point to a single law?
Well, sure. You don't have to point to a law.
Yes, you do. If you're going to claim systemic racism, that's what systemic racism means.
But I've given you examples of why I think black people are not.
You've given me examples of individual racism.
Well, yeah.
That's not systemic racism.
So you believe that black people are treated the same as white people in our justice system as well?
They should be, yes. Our justice system is designed to treat people equally. That's why I'm alarmed when Trump is not treated equally.
Okay, so hold on. Warren, my question wasn't if you think they should be treated the same. I agree with you. They should. My question is,
there's no way for me to know. You would have to provide me an example of where it's not being applied fairly for me to say it's unfair.
Well, first of all, money is a big factor here. I think we both can agree that if you have legal representation and money,
I agree with that.
Okay, well, in this country, unfortunately, minorities, not as a whole, but many minorities in this country are suffering in poverty. And when they're arrested for certain crimes, they are not treated the same as somebody who has privilege, who has money that can get legal representation and can afford it. So isn't that a systemic issue to begin with? Yeah. Maybe you don't want to apply color.
I work with kids who come from nothing. All right. I've seen them from the worst circumstances. The vast majority in that school were white. So there are a lot of poor people that are of all different skin colors. You're absolutely right that your socioeconomic status is going to influence the kind of lawyer you can get. And I think that is very problematic. I agree with you. It's very strange that if you have enough money, you can navigate the system better. Sure. I agree with you there, but that's not racism.
So I guess where we fundamentally disagree is that you believe as a whole, black people are treated the same as white people in society for the most part when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to our justice system. And I think there's a lot of black people that would disagree with you on that. And listen, I'm not black, but, you know, I talk about these issues all the time and you're entitled to your opinion, but I completely disagree with you. I don't think as a whole, and let me be very clear on this, I am pro law enforcement. I think the overwhelming majority of police officers are very good people. They're heroes and they do great work. There's no question about that. But I literally have been in the car with black people driving the vehicle who were pulled over for absolutely no reason. That's never happened to me before, by the way. I've had some speeding tickets.
The time I got pulled over was for absolutely no reason. I get your, but that's, Okay, you were in the car with someone who was black that was driving, and they got pulled over for a nonsensical reason.
And that happened to you once, right? But a couple of my friends, this happens to them literally a dozen times a year. And I think
What
it's
city do they live in? Where I live. No one gets pulled over.
You would be against the guy who
President Trump has the right to pardon whoever he wants. And guess what? If a Democrat wins and Mark Kelly is convicted of seditious conspiracy, he could be pardoned as well.
Wait,
That's
hold
the way
on.
it works.
Hold on. I want to start out by talking about a topic that I don't know if this bothers you, but it certainly bothers me. I think we all could agree, whether you disagree with Senator Mark Kelly and his politics. He's a decent man. He served this country honorably. I have a lot of respect for him and his wife, and I think he's a good man.
No.
And this ad comes out, and they didn't say defy the president. They didn't say don't listen to orders. What they said is what our Constitution says, which is do not abide by unlawful orders, which, by the way, everybody should be doing. And then Donald Trump says he should be hung, says he should get death. And now Pete Hegseth has come out and said, well, they're going to lower his ranking and lower the money that he's receiving. I would hope, and I want to get your thoughts on this, David, that you're not okay with that.
Look, and I am not going to talk about January 6th today. The thing is, this congressman and 5 other Democratic lawmakers insinuated that Trump was putting our U.S. military in a position where they were essentially proposing to do unconstitutional thing. And as a result, they had a duty to not follow illegal orders. I understand what you're saying, but what is the point? Like, let me ask, like, who just walks around and says, oh, hey, general reminder. It's not like this was like a general policy reminder from the congressman that it was like, oh, hey, don't forget, you're not supposed to obey illegal orders. Well, clearly, he was setting this up to be like, hey, I don't like what the president's doing, and you have an oath to protect the Constitution. And don't forget, you don't have to follow legal orders. It was almost like he was goading people to refuse the commander-in-chief, and I'm not sure what illegal orders he's even referencing. Well, the whole thing is really weird to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's worse than weird when the president of the United States calls on the hanging of an acting senator who served
sedition. The penalty for sedition is death. Yeah, I mean, why is he telling our military to deny its chain of command? I mean, no,
that's not what he did. But because that's not what he did, that's not true, David. He didn't say do that. That's totally not.
No. What he said specifically was this administration is pitting our uniformed military and intelligence community professionals against American citizens like us.
They are
all swore. So let me explain that sentence to me. What does he mean when he says this administration is pitting our uniformed military and intelligence community professionals against American citizens? He's laying out the case, suggesting that the administration is causing conflict between professionals and illegal orders. You have to admit, what was the point of saying that?
So I want to talk to you guys about your online life and privacy. And you know how sending a message an unprotected Wi-Fi is like yelling your secrets in a crowded room, right? Well, a VPN is like moving that conversation sort of like into a locked soundproof booth. That's what private internet access, or PIA, does. It encrypts your internet connection, hiding your IP address and protecting your personal information and everything you do from online hackers and others that are looking to exploit your private information. This important coverage obviously protects you from networks such as coffee shops, the airport, and even the Wi-Fi at your own house. So I've been using PIA myself. It's great. I love how simple it is. You just open the app, really. Pick a location, say New York or even another country, and with one click, you're connected through a secure tunnel. Boom, total privacy. Also great for streaming, of course. Some shows or sports events are blocked based on where you live, but PIA lets you access content from 91 countries and all 50 U.S. states. That means you can watch what you want wherever you are. This includes your favorite streaming services such as Disney+, Netflix, even Hulu. And here's a big one. One subscription protects unlimited devices, your phone, your laptop, your tablet, your TV. Even your whole household is covered. Plus, PIA has a strict no logs policy that's been proven in court and verified by Deloitte. So they don't track what you do, period. So PIA is rated excellent on Trustpilot and signed up as a totally risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So how great is that? Protect yourself online. Grab 83% off plus 4 extra months free using my link, which is piavpn.com/PTL. Again, that's piavpn.com/PTL for the best online privacy deal out there. I've been using it daily, especially when traveling or working on public Wi-Fi. I've been traveling a lot lately, and it's one of the few tools I can honestly recommend to everyone. Well, I'll give you an example of what they're talking about. First of all, you can't just murder people in boats with no due process, with no evidence to the American people.
Well,
you can't. No, you can't do that. It's just very simple. It's very cut and dry.
Well, the way you framed it, though, is not accurate. He's not murdering innocent people. That we have.
They haven't shown.
Tren de Aragua has been identified as a terrorist group. And he is using the authorities of a commander-in-chief to take military action against enemy combatants heading towards the United States to poison Americans. Now, I'm not saying you don't have a legitimate concern for it. Let me just be clear. I just disagree with your framing it as murder. What I'm suggesting is there are a lot of constitutional scholars, a lot of libertarians, a lot of Democrats, even some Republicans that would suggest that the actions of the president of the United States targeting those Venezuelan drug boats is, whether it be unconstitutional or not, is arguable, but whether or not it's proper, considering they haven't had a trial, they haven't had due process and all of that. But this is an argument that's happened after the Obama drone strikes. This is the argument that's happened after the illegal Gulf Wars. I mean, so this is a much bigger conversation of what powers does the commander-in-chief have. The court has made it clear Trump is authorized to do what he's doing with respect to the Venezuelan drug boats. Yeah,
but I'm focused on what's going on right now, and there are some that have survived some of these attacks and sent back to their country with investigations, and they've shown no evidence of wrongdoing. They're not releasing any information.
That's propaganda. Look, we have look, you've seen the unclassified surveillance videos of these fast boats coming from Venezuela, heading towards the United States, loaded with barrels filled with drugs.
That's not confirmed. We haven't seen barrels.
Fine, but it's not confirmed. But what you're alleging that the Venezuelans are saying isn't confirmed either.
No,
so we're just picking sides.
Well, I'm not alleging anything. All I'm simply saying is that they have not proven or provided any evidence. They're shooting these people in these boats with no due process.
But the Venezuelans haven't provided any evidence that they're not running drugs to the United States.
You can't just shoot people on a whim, hoping that there's drugs on a boat.
But your position, Brian, and look, I'm not. You have a fair argument that you're making. I just disagree with your conclusion. Your conclusion is the fact that these are innocent people and there's no proof otherwise, and you can't just blow up their boats. I disagree.
I didn't say they're innocent people. I said I don't know.
Oh, either way.
The problem I have, going back to Senator Mark Kelly, he said nothing illegal. He didn't threaten anybody. He said what is in the Constitution. Now, you can disagree with his politics.
I think the way he framed it was a little seditious, but that's not for me to decide. It's for courts and the Ethics Committee. And the Attorney General. So it'll be up to them.
There's nothing seditious about saying you cannot abide by, quote, illegal orders.
But what about this administration is pitting our uniformed military and intelligence community professionals against American citizens? Is that a seditious statement?
So no, it's not. But explain to me what you would defy it as when he calls out troops to American cities, when law enforcement there and local politicians who know the city better than anybody are saying, quote, we don't need your help and we don't want you here. Yet he's doing that. Mark Kelly didn't say anything wrong. If somebody asked you to commit a crime, whether you're in uniform or not, it is your duty to not commit that crime.
But nobody's been asked to commit a crime. The Supreme Court has authorized the president to use the National Guard in the manner in which he's using it. So no crime is being committed.
So Mark Kelly specifically said, do not abide by illegal orders among the other 5.
Yes, but he also said that the president is taking our uniformed military and intelligence community and pitting them against American citizens. That's a false statement.
So when troops go into these cities and they pepper spray people, some of these people we've learned, a pastor, people with no violent... It
doesn't matter who they are. They're protecting federal agents doing their job.
Okay, so you don't think anything unlawful has happened? I know a guy named Robbie Roadsteamer who's a prankster, but he wasn't committing a crime. He was dressed up in his giraffe outfit. He literally was doing nothing wrong. He now has a lawsuit with ICE agents. And that is what Mark Kelly is talking about. That is one of many examples.
There was a lot of people at the Capitol on January 6th who were just hanging out, not doing anything wrong, and they were indicted for terrorism.
Let's just, again, you said you weren't going to bring up January 6th.
Because the parallels is this, Brian. I wasn't at the Capitol on January 6th.
But you're
and
wrong.
I know some people that weren't.
Everybody that was in that
No,
building
hang on. But I just want to say something. Let me explain. I wasn't going to go to Washington on January 6th because that's a bad place to be, considering what everybody was worried would happen happened, right? I chose not to go there because that is not a place to be. I had some friends go to Portland to counter-protest the protesters. I chose not to go because, for me, I just don't like the odds of that turning out badly. When you make a decision to stand out front of an ICE facility where there's every single night there's Antifa and Black Bloc attacking federal agents and federal agents firing pepper balls back, the odds are you're going to get mixed up in that crossfire. So even if he's wearing a giraffe suit, if he's dressed in a regular suit, or if he's dressed as the priest, if you're there out front of the ICE building demonstrating and it becomes violent and the police use non-lethal methods to defend their position, the odds are you're going to get caught in the crossfire, just like media gets caught in the crossfire.
What are the odds when you have a bunch of people chanting "Hang Mike Pence"? Some of those people.
What about the celebration of Charlie Kirk getting shot, and the people wearing shirts that are stained in blood, and people pointing to their neck, celebrating? It's on both sides.
You're talking about the teachers that were wearing stained bloody shirts in Arizona.
They said it was from a year ago.
No, they didn't say that. They didn't say that. There are pictures that are out there that prove that. So that was actually fake news by right-wing propaganda media. So
what about the people? True. What about the people in the protests that keep pointing to their neck and making fun of the fact that Charlie Kirk was shot? Were those fake too?
So if you're referring to a teacher that was doing so, it is not against the law, and she had the right to do that.
What? But saying "Hang Mike Pence" isn't against the law. That's a free expression of speech.
Didn't say it was against the law. The point that I was trying to make is when you have thousands of people, some of whom were violent, and cops are being beaten with their own batons, it probably wouldn't have been a good idea to be there either. But I want to go back.
Agents are being beaten as well. They're having things. Officers are having water bottles and urine thrown on them.
I don't defend or support any law enforcement official being harmed in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. However, there are people dressed up in chickens and frogs, and my friend Robbie Roadsteamer, who, by the way, was not breaking the law. He was singing a song with a guitar, and he was shot with
Where was he singing the song? Not in his living room.
No, but he was has the right as an American citizen to be in that place. So it doesn't matter whether.
But that place is a high likelihood of you getting caught up in non-lethal counter attack.
That's not what was going on at that moment. You're wrong.
So they just shot him because they don't like giraffes?
No, they shot him because he was being. And by the way, he has now a lawsuit that is against.
Let the courts figure it out.
Going back to what I said earlier, we can go back and forth on this and disagree on this, but here's the bottom line. Whether you disagree or not with what Senator Mark Kelly did in that ad, by the way, I see nothing wrong with it, but we obviously disagree on that.
And that's fine. We're allowed to.
It is. Can you at least admit to me it is beyond inappropriate and a joke and a sick joke when Donald Trump calls for the hanging of somebody like Mark Kelly as the president of the United States?
The crime for sedition is death. I think it's just as dangerous for six members of the U.S. Congress to suggest that the president of the United States is pitting uniformed military intelligence against American citizens. That is a false and dangerous statement.
So you're not willing to admit that even though this guy hasn't been charged with a crime, and by the way, it'll never stand up in a courtroom.
He might get charged with a crime. We will see.
I guarantee you it'll never stand up in a courtroom, just like Comey and
that is a whole nother segment.
Okay, well,
my friend.
I guarantee you right now, and I will make any bet with anybody on the right, that any charges that are put forth, if there are even charges, which I don't think will happen, to Senator Mark Kelly will not stand in a court of law. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is calling for the death. And you can't denounce that, and you can't say, geez, he probably shouldn't have done that.
I think everybody in the U.S. Congress and everybody on the left should denounce 6 U.S. congressmen suggesting that the president is asking our uniformed military and intelligence community to pick up arms essentially and get some American citizens. That's not what they're being asked to do. It's a lie. And here's the problem with that. And here's my issue with this. Here's why it's so dangerous. There has been videos on social media with leftists suggesting that, hey, the Second Amendment works both ways, saying that people should arm themselves in Washington, in North Carolina, and potentially, I can send you the video, and potentially.
Was this an elected official? Because
this was the public. Okay. What I'm telling you.
So it's just
let
a
me make
bunch
my
of
point.
idiots on social media. I mean,
No,
I don't.
but here's the problem. When there's idiots on social media suggesting that people pick up arms against ICE agents, and then you have 6 U.S. congressmen suggesting that the president is using them illegally against American citizens, which, by the way, isn't true because illegals are not American citizens.
A lot of the people that are in these crowds are not Americans.
The end
are
result,
American citizens.
but the
You're
end
wrong about
result
that.
is could
No, but
be
what you just said is not true.
legitimizing and emboldening
There are American
violence.
citizens, David. There are American citizens that have been arrested. There are American citizens that are
Fine,
not
but that
violent,
doesn't take away the danger of the statement that he made and the other 5 congressmen, because the problem is people might hear that and it could legitimize the violence. That's not turning down the temperature, Brian. That's the opposite.
I cannot believe it, but
Yeah.
you're claiming that you think Senator Mark Kelly and 5 others that are saying you should not abide by illegal orders.
They're saying way more than that, Brian.
Hold on. You're saying that that's more dangerous, the ad that they put out, than the president of the United States calling for the hanging of sitting senators. You can look me in a straight face right now and say
if you are engaged in seditious conspiracy against the United States, the penalty of that is death. And if you are, hang on, that is for the Justice Department and the court of law to determine. And guess what? He's not going to hang them if they're innocent. But I'll tell you what, if you're guilty of engaging in seditious conspiracy against the United States, that is a valid punishment.
So you would disagree then with the pardon that Donald Trump gave Enrique Tarrio, who was convicted of seditious conspiracy. You would be against that, right? You would be against the guy who
President Trump has the right to pardon whoever he wants. And guess what? If a Democrat wins and Mark Kelly is convicted of seditious conspiracy, he could be pardoned as well.
Wait,
That's
hold
the way
on.
it works.
Hold on.
Sure.
So
And now I got to run.
So you're okay with the pardon of a guy who was sentenced to 22 years for seditious conspiracy, Enrique Tarrio, but you're totally okay with a guy who wasn't charged and wasn't convicted in Senator Mark Kelly. Well, he wasn't. He's not been charged and he won't be convicted. But you're totally okay with the president of the United States threatening death and the hanging of Mark Kelly. Do I have that right?
He is threatening. No, you don't have it right. He is threatening the punishment for the crime of seditious conspiracy.
He said he should be hung.
If what? Just should be hung in. If what?
For what Mark Kelly did in that ad, he said he should be hung.
Right, because he and the Justice Department will investigate it. If there's evidence that the Attorney General believes should lead to an indictment, the FBI will arrest him. And guess what? They'll charge him. And guess what? If a judge and a jury, well, fine. But if a judge and a jury disagrees with the president, Mark Kelly's not getting hung, and everything's okay.
Okay, so by your standard, a judge and a jury found Enrique Tarrio guilty of seditious conspiracy.
Yep.
You think he should be in jail, or are you totally okay with that?
Not under the circumstances of his trial, nor any of the January 6th defendants, because they didn't have fair trials, and that's why I agree with their pardons.
If you're convicted, you're okay with a pardon, but if you're not convicted or even charged, you're okay with the president threatening death on somebody.
That is not what I'm saying. What I said was, if Mark Kelly, specifically what I said was, if Mark Kelly is tried and convicted of seditious conspiracy, and one of the penalties, by the way, there is a phase in which you would have to get that death sentence for that crime if you're convicted. The sentence of that would be death, and at that point, sure, everything is out on the table if you're convicted of a crime. Well, but I'm not suggesting that he just be hung just for the sake of it. Everybody's entitled to due process under the law.
Well, not according to Donald Trump, apparently. But anyway, again, we'll agree to disagree on this.
Always.
But I think Mark Kelly is a hero, and nothing that they said in that ad is against the law. And I'm just mesmerized that you're okay with the president of the United States threatening death on a sitting senator who served this.
What fun would it be if we agree with each other?
That's true. Right. I want one more topic because I know you got to run.
Right, yeah, hurry, please, because they're staring at me.
I will. Oh, they're staring at you.
They want to leave.
I understand. So there are a lot of people on the right, including Jack Posobiec yesterday, Ben Shapiro, and others on the far right, who all happen to be white, by the way, who are claiming that Derek Chauvin should get a pardon from Donald Trump. I'm going to get into this a little bit later on in the show. Gosh. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on a man who is a convicted murderer. Yeah. We all saw the video, and so many on the right are calling for Chauvin to be, they're also making him out to be some sort of hero that should be pardoned. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I don't know. I haven't had enough time to really analyze the arguments and formulate my own opinion. I can just say this. It's a very sensitive topic. Obviously, for people on both sides, we remember the aftermath of the George Floyd death. And, the question is whether or not Derek Chauvin was responsible for that death. He had a trial. He was convicted. The court said he was. A lot of people feel like he didn't get a fair trial. I don't know enough about it to tell you one way or the other without researching it more. But I'll say this: look, the president's power to pardon is absolute. What he chooses to do with it, there's political ramifications for it, and we'll see what ends up happening. I don't know, regardless of who calls for it, inevitably it's Trump's decision. But I don't know enough about it to say whether it's legitimate or not. I don't know, so I can't debate with you on this one because I just don't have the information.
Well, fair enough. I mean, we know that Derek Chauvin is a convicted murderer. We know that there were two autopsies that both found it was a homicide. It had nothing to do with drugs in his system. I'll get into this. I guess.
Get into that. There's different side. I mean, I've heard other arguments that there was drugs in the system. Like I said, I haven't looked it up enough to know what's true, what's not true. I will argue with you just about anything that I believe in or researched, and I haven't done this, and I just do my best not to argue about something I don't know about.
Fair enough.
That's the difference between me and other people.
All right. Fair enough.